Welcome to Riding the Trauma Train, or welcome back if we've shared this space before. I'm Lydia, your host and fellow passenger in this journey of self-healing, inner strength and personal growth. This podcast is a safe, judgment-free space dedicated to the realities of living with and healing from trauma. Through personal stories and in-depth conversations with special guests, including therapists, healers, practitioners, and fellow survivors, we look at what healing can truly look like in everyday life. We explore realistic healing journeys and share simple, sustainable practices and actionable tools to support your well-being along the way. So grab your ticket, take a seat, and remember you are not on this journey alone. Today, we are joined by Dr. Debi Silber, who is the CEO and founder of the PBT, Post Betrayal Transformation Institute, and National Forgiveness Day, which is amazing. Dr. Debi is an award-winning speaker, two-time #1 international best-selling author. Wow. Her podcast is From Betrayal to Breakthrough, and it ranks 1.5% nationally, internationally, globally, all of the above. So, Dr. Debi Silber, welcome to Riding the Trauma Train.
Thank you. Looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. I have actually had a little look at your TED Talks, which were fantastic. And I am just intrigued as to the concept of post-betrayal transformation. Tell me how you got to this moment. What is this all about?
Yeah, I don't think anybody studies betrayal because you like the topic. You study you study because you have to. I'm in business 34 years, health, mindset, personal development. And then I had a painful betrayal from my family. I thought I did all I needed to do to heal from that, but then it happened again a few years later. This time it was my husband. So that was the deal breaker. Got him out of the house. I was shocked, blindsided, heartbroken, just like anybody else who's, if you've experienced that. And usually I would look to books or courses or mentors to sort of help me learn my way through something. And there wasn't anything available. And I had 4 kids, 6 dogs, a business. Like I had to get it together. So I don't even know what inspired this decision, but I found myself enrolling in a PhD program. I mean, I didn't even know how I was going to take my next breath. And here I am enrolling in this PhD program, truly this was so big that I just needed to understand it so big. And went through the program, did a study. That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life.
Wow. Okay. What were those 3 discoveries?
Yeah. So the first one was betrayal is a different type of trauma that needs a different way to heal. And, if you've been to any sort of support where they say trauma's trauma, no, it's not. And I'll give you a few reasons why. The first thing is, think about it. There's this complete and total shattering of the self.
Hmm.
Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. Like, let's say when you lose someone you love, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss, life will never be the same. But you don't go back and question that relationship. You don't question your ability to trust. You don't question your sanity, right? With betrayal, you do. So it's so different. Another thing about betrayal is it's so often the person who's betrayed struggles and suffers in silence because they're so embarrassed, they're so humiliated, they're so ashamed. Like, think about it. Again, let's use losing someone you love. People rally. They're bringing you the casseroles and what do you need and how can I help? But so often the betrayed is so ashamed, they're going through it alone. To make matters worse, very often they're covering for the betrayer because the betrayer is so well loved by the family, the friends, the community. So they don't want to damage their reputation for them. So they sort of take this on themselves. And then on top of that, here they are dealing with it themselves and they're going to work. They're raising the kids. The kids are still like, hey, what's for dinner? Show up at work, this and that. So it's a very, very different type of trauma that needs a very, very different way to heal. So the first discovery was that it is different. And when you completely heal from it, you're in a place called PBT, Post Betrayal Transformation, because you've rebuilt your life and yourself.
Okay. And what are the other 2? Because obviously I think on one of your TED Talks, you said about rebuilding a house, and if you have if something's broken, then get a boiler fix. If something's broken, then I don't know, you get a window replaced. But if a tornado comes in and you need to rebuild and I think listening to this on my headphones and was like, oh my gosh, that is such an amazing analogy. It's one that you can relate to. Is that part of the PBT, or is that part of the
Yes.
initial kind of realization?
Yeah, and just to share that so everybody really has a full experience of what I was talking about, and thank you for watching that TED Talk. I shared the difference between resilience and transformation. Resilience you need for your everyday.
Mhm.
Trauma and transformation is a whole different thing. So I use this example of, let's take this old house, right? Let's say the old house needs a new roof and you get a new roof. That would be resilience. You're restoring it, bringing it back to what it was. Or let's say it needs a new paint job and you paint it. That's resilience, bringing it back to what it was. Here's trauma and transformation. That tornado comes by, like you said, and levels the house, right? So your new roof's not going to fix it and your paint job's not going to fix it, and both won't fix it. But here's the thing. You have every right to stand there at the lot where your house once stood and say, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And you'd be right. And you can call over everybody you know and say, isn't this the most horrible thing you've ever seen? They'd all agree. And you have every right to cry and mourn and grieve the loss of your house until your last breath. However, if you choose to rebuild the house, you don't have to, but if you choose to, why would you build the same one? There's nothing there.
Mhm.
Why not make it better, more beautiful, give it everything the old house didn't have? That's the opportunity. And that's what happens when we've experienced a profound trauma and we use it as this launch pad for our transformation. That's trauma well served. And PBT, post betrayal transformation, is everything has absolutely crashed and burned. You don't try to just recover. There's no recovering. You want to use that experience to build a new life, build a new self. You take all the parts you love and you leave behind everything that no longer serves. That's when you create and build that magnificent house. That's what I meant.
Yeah, and literally, it's so relatable, and it's relatable because you can see it within visually, can't you? You can actually, and you know the difference between that small kind of rebuilding and that giant kind of transformation, as you said. You said something there, and I was thinking with regards to the betrayal, when you go through it initially, and you said about obviously grief, people bring you casseroles and things like that. But when you go through betrayal, you're actually also questioning yourself. You don't
Right.
question someone that's just passed away, but when you go through betrayal, you're questioning, what did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? What did I say that day to make that person go off? You're literally kind of going through two different things, aren't you? You're going through the betrayal of the other person and the kind of a betrayal of yourself because you don't
Mhm.
understand what's happening in that kind of situation.
Yes, exactly. And first of all, it has nothing to do with the person who's been betrayed. And I have worked with so many betrayers and they've confirmed it over and over. It had nothing to do with my partner. They say that over and over. But here's the thing. When someone is betrayed, there is so much to clean up. There's not just the shattering of the self. There are different types of trust that have been shattered. There are also symptoms of post betrayal syndrome. That was the second discovery and the third. I want to get to those. But just to mention what you talked about as far as trust, again, well-meaning therapists and coaches and counselors where they say, well, you need to rebuild trust again. And I wrote the book Trust Again, but you need to rebuild this. So start with a low stake, start with something small, give, something to, let's say, trusting in a friend, a low stakes situation. That's like one of the last places you need to rebuild. And here's why. Think about this. When you trust someone, let's say your partner, whatever your mechanism for discerning trust is, they do 50, 100 things consistently, repeatedly. I can feel safe and comfortable knowing they are trustworthy. So then at that point, we deem them, they are trustworthy, right? Then they betray us. Not only is it terrifying because this was the person you trusted the most. This was the person who gave you a sense of safety and security, and that's who took it away. But now what happens is it's terrifying for the self because we say, my gosh, my whole system I created for deciding trustworthiness is fundamentally flawed. You see? So
Yeah.
how in the world, what use is it starting with a low stakes thing with a friend? I don't even know how to decide what trust looks like because I did and I messed up. So I don't know if my whole system is broken. So self trust is completely shattered. And again, these are well meaning, well intentioned counselors, therapists, coaches, but it is so fundamentally flawed how trust is taught in rebuilding. And I think it's 84%. And this was the second discovery that there's this collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's now known as Post Betrayal Syndrome. And we've tested over 100,000 people to see to what extent they're struggling. Happy to share the stats. But just as far as that trust piece, 84%. This is out of over 100,000 people have an inability to trust. Now, if that doesn't get rebuilt, think about the decisions you make. Think about, how you connect with people going forward. Think about, how you trust people you work with, right? If you don't rebuild that, you're living this very safe, small life.
And you're living a life on eggshells as well. Like you're not going to be able to kind of completely relax into whatever you're doing because you're going to be constantly on edge. And if you're constantly on edge, you're going to be constantly in flight or fight. So
Exactly.
it's the two go hand in hand. And I think self trust is, like you say, if you've been betrayed and then you lose that self trust, you almost kind of broken twice, haven't you? Because you've kind of you don't trust yourself then, like literally self trust, trusting yourself, but as a bigger picture, that's so discerning for your future. Wow,
Exactly.
that's mad.
Exactly. And that's why people it's so different because now, in a crisis like betrayal and again, think about it. This was the person you run to when other people are causing the harm. That's the person causing the harm. So you don't trust yourself for your own decision making ability. You don't trust the person who betrayed you. So if you don't trust the person you trusted the most and you don't trust yourself, how in the world can you trust in anything or anyone? You
Yeah.
see? So it needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. And it is such again, another opportunity that is so tragically missed. And then people, wonder why is it that with other traumas, you kind of heal and rebuild, but betrayal lingers for years, decades. That's another one of the reasons why. And it's also because until and unless you intentionally and deliberately heal betrayal, it will follow you around into your work, into your health, into your relationships, and with those symptoms of post betrayal syndrome too. Happy to share them if that would help.
Yes, please. I think because the way I'm thinking of it is obviously I know you shared that you were betrayed by a family member, then betrayed by your husband. I'm thinking of a familial type situation. So if you imagine someone has been betrayed by a close family member, how do they that trauma they're going to carry on for most of their life if they don't actually deal with the betrayal side of things. So if you've got somebody that, I don't know, something's happened between a child and an uncle, for say,
Hmm.
that betrayal, that person is someone that they trusted, that's someone that they looked to for security. If that betrayal has been quashed from the get-go, how can somebody in that adult life kind of work through that because it wasn't given in childhood?
Yeah. And it's a great question. Without, again, intentionally and deliberately healing the original betrayal where it started, they're going to find relationships, not that they're good, they're just so similar. It's like, oh, I know how this works. I know my
Yeah.
role in this kind of thing. And that's where they'll have symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. They'll have repeat experiences. They'll live a whole lifetime of betrayal thinking, is it me? Yes, it is. Not in that it's your fault, in that it's your opportunity. There's a profound lesson waiting, needing to be learned. And unless you learn that, you're going to have opportunities in the form of people to teach you. So the whole idea is you want to stop and take a look and say, okay, if this has happened, like I keep going from boss to boss to boss, friend to friend to friend, partner to partner to partner. What is it? What's the lesson here? Usually it's that just understand already that you are lovable, worthy, and deserving. You need better boundaries in place, whatever that is, unless you get that, it's going to keep showing up. And it's showing
Hmm.
up because it's trying to get your attention. It's not that you deserve it at all. It's that there's something that needs to be understood and acknowledged. Like, look at my example. It was my family. I thought I did what I needed to do to heal. I thought I had the tools, the resources. I didn't. Happened to get it was my husband. For me, the lesson was, my personal lesson, I never took my own needs seriously. I never took care of myself. I had 4 kids, 6 dogs, a business. It was about everybody else, you know? And for me
Yeah.
to enroll in a PhD program, like, where was that coming from? To do something for me that was so big, but it changed my entire life. And thankfully, now the lives of thousands of others. So it's making those drastic actions, taking those drastic actions because of the lesson that needs to be learned. Lesson learned, right? It changed everything. So, that's just an example of it, but happy to share some of those symptoms. And one thing about that too, you mentioned, let's say childhood, when something happens in childhood, like for example, 45% of everybody betrayed has a digestive issue of some kind.
Mhm.
Crohn's,
Wow.
IBS, diverticulitis. Yeah. So now, like, here's an example. There was a woman in our program in her mid 80s. She had a 70 plus year digestive issue. She was adopted. They didn't tell her. It was like something like that. So 70 plus years. You can imagine the medications, the supplements, the food, the protocols, and she was just like, well, I just have stomach problems. That's just who I am. 2 weeks working in our program healed from a 70 plus year digestive issue. That's what happens when you deal with the actual issue, which was the betrayal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think, and what you've said there is, so it reminded me of, I had another guest called Chantel Story, and we were talking about reasons and everything happens for a reason. She corrected me, and she had this big conversation with somebody on a workshop, and they said everything happens for an opportunity. So every time you say that, I have this thing in my head saying everything happens for an opportunity. And I do think absolutely right in the fact that if you don't heal that major element of betrayal, also where can forgiveness come from? If you can't accept and work through that betrayal, you can't forgive what that betrayal was, if that makes sense in a sentence.
Yeah. But forgiveness comes later. And you'll see that in the third discovery. When we try to forgive too early or when we forgive for the wrong reasons, it backfires every single time. And I mean, yeah, and we could talk much more about it. And I
I
founded National.
know.
Yeah. So
That's what.
I'm a big believer in forgiveness, but it's got to be for the right reasons. It's for us. It has really nothing to do
Yeah.
with the other person. And it also has to be, it's really about releasing the power all that pain has over us. But healing from betrayal is, for me, I've been through death of a loved one. I've been through disease, and healing from betrayal was for me, the hardest thing I've ever done. And I thought it needs its own holiday.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So these are the symptoms of post betrayal syndrome, PBS. This was the second discovery. Now imagine we've tested men, women, just about every country is represented, over 100,000 people. As much as I'm going to share the symptoms, hear these numbers. Ready? 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. I mean, that's exhausting. 94% deal with painful triggers. And that's, they're so painful. The most common physical symptoms, 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. So you sleep all night, you wake up, you're exhausted. Your adrenals have tanked. 7% have weight changes. So in the beginning, maybe you can't hold food down. Later on, you're emotionally eating, using food for comfort. I mentioned digestive issues. Some of the most common mental symptoms, 78% are overwhelmed. I'm skipping a bunch. 62% can't concentrate. So imagine that. You can't concentrate. You're exhausted. You have a gut issue. You still have to go to work. You still have to
Yeah.
raise your kids, right? You still have to deal with elderly parents. That's not even emotionally. The 8% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry, and you're going to bounce back and forth between those two
Yeah.
all day long. 79% is stress, just a few more. I mentioned trust. 84% have an inability to trust.
Hmm.
This one killed me too. 7% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. So they put the big wall up, right? They keep the bad ones
Yeah.
up, but they keep out the good ones too. 2% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how. Now, the craziest thing about those stats, you didn't hear me say 20%, 30%. They're super high. They're also not representative of a recent betrayal. This could be from that child with the uncle that you mentioned.
Yeah.
This could be the partner who broke your heart in high school. So think about this. That person may not know, care, remember. They may not even be alive. And here we are decades later with these symptoms because it was left unhealed. The good news is you could heal from all of it. That was the third discovery.
Wow.
Hmm.
So tell me about that then. How does one that feels that they have been betrayed, how do they get through one, how do they actually recognize that
Hmm.
if it's something that is from childhood? Or two, what is their first step to take to actually working through it?
Yeah, and I'm happy to share the third discovery where you'll see where that plays out. But just in a nutshell, you're going to see it if you're not healed, you're going to see it in your work, in your health, in your relationships. In your relationships, you're going to see it in one of two ways. Number one, repeat betrayal, like we talked about. The face has changed, but it's the same thing. That's
Mhm.
a classic sign of an unhealed betrayal. The second way is you put the big wall up, right? Again, what we said, you're keeping the bad ones out, but you're keeping the good ones out too. And that's how you know it's unhealed, where people are like, no, no, I'm good just as long as I don't speak to them, to hear from them, think about them. That's not healed. That's hardened. Or the people who say, you know what, I'm good. I'm just doing my own thing and I'm okay.
Mhm.
That's coming from that's not healed either. It's like, let's say you love cooking and you burn yourself on the stove. That's like saying, I'm never cooking again. That's not fair
Yeah.
to you, right? So needs to be healed. We see it in health. People go to the most well-meaning doctors, coaches, healers, therapists, to manage a stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. And at the root of it is an unhealed betrayal. Or we see it at work. People, let's say, want that raise or promotion. They deserve it, but they're afraid to ask. They lost their confidence. That's an unhealed betrayal. Or they want to trust. They want to be this collaborative partner, trust their boss, their coworker, but the person they trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How do they trust that boss, that coworker? You see, it shows up everywhere. That's how you know it's unhealed.
Yeah. And how would so all these things are happening, and say you're somebody that is, say you're really high functioning, really high, not people pleasing, you want to achieve,
Hmm.
a high achiever, and you still can't move forward. Is that a really big sign that there is some kind of betrayal that you've not worked through?
Yeah. It's one of those things, and people are always shocked when I say this because they're so used to using their brilliant mind to get the job done. That's been the tool they've used for every job they've had, and it's worked. Betrayal has nothing to do with the logical, rational mind.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because that's why often it's the smartest people are they're shocked with what happened, but they're shocked that their mind isn't helping them move through it. It's like if you had all these home improvements and all you have is a hammer. Sometimes
Yeah,
you need a different
absolutely.
tool. And it's a different tool for the right, and it's a different tool for the job. So even though someone is so smart, it's that your intelligence has nothing to do with healing. And in fact, it's actually getting in your way.
Yeah, that would make sense because you're always kind of trying to logicize what's happening to
And you,
you or what's happened to you.
yeah,
So yeah, that does make perfect sense. What then would be, is it level three, stage three
yeah. So
of
you want me to share
working
the
through
five
this? Yes,
stages?
please.
Okay. So the third discovery, this was the most exciting out of all the discoveries. And what we learned was while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, many people do, if we're going to fully heal, we will move through 5 proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every stage. And we know what we need to do in order to move from one stage to the next. Healing's entirely predictable. So when I learned that, I'm like, how do I keep that to myself? So I put the 5 stages into a program and it blew up. And then I said, now we really need to create our certification, our training program, because for every coach and therapist and counselor that is trained in these 5 stages, someone's learning curve, I mean, they'll save themselves 20, 30, 40 plus years of pain. So that's all we do is train our practitioners in the 5 stages, but I'll give you like a brief overview of what it looks like. And I also wrote about it in Unstuck, which is just my newest book, which is,
I was going to say that's your newest book, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm so excited about it because this is for practitioners, because here's the thing. It was never taught. It's not taught in coaching schools. It's not taught in therapy programs. It's not taught in college. This was only through my study, through my discoveries, we learned about the 5 stages. So it gives practitioners a glimpse into the 5 stages. And so they know, wow, your most resistant client, they're not trying to give you a hard time. It's betrayal. That client who they tell you I'm fine and then you send them off, that's the most wasted opportunity. The transformation hasn't even happened. So when you learn the 5 stages, then you're just such a better coach and therapist and counselor because this is a language that hasn't been taught. Anyway, so stage 1, this is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And what I saw with everybody, me too, was this heavy lean on the physical and mental thinking and doing, and kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual feeling and being. Now, here's the thing. People, they're like, how did I not see? How did I not know? You were just doing life and you weren't scanning for betrayal. You were in what you thought in a trusting relationship. So you weren't looking to decode someone's actions. You were trusting. And that's why we're always so shocked. But that's why. But sometimes, and we turn down our intuition. But sometimes we intentionally turn down our intuition too. And we do that because if our intuition is telling us something and we confront it right then, it's going to shake up everything we've created. The job, the family, the places, all the things, the friends. And sometimes we make a decision that we don't have the physical, the mental, the emotional, the financial bandwidth. So we think, if I just sort of look the other way, I'm better off. We find typically that's not the case, but that's very often a choice that a lot of people make. Anyway, stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day. This is the scariest of all of the stages. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, the worldview. So right here, you've ignited the stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. The mind, it's like, what? You cannot make sense of what you just learned. And your worldview has just been shattered. That's your mental model, the rules that govern you. Trust this person, don't go there. And in one earth-shattering moment, every rule you've been following is no longer true. The bottom has bottomed out, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. It's terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything or anyone in order to stay safe and stay alive in that stage 3, survival. And this is the trickiest stage. And this is the one that most counselors, therapists, and coaches miss. Because now, because it feels so much better, we're surviving. We're creating a functional life. And because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma we just came from, we think it's good. And then we get celebrated, like, oh, you're doing so much better. Good for you. And rightfully so, we should be celebrated. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we think this is it. Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But we think this is it. And that's when you go to your coach, counselor, therapist. You say, I think I'm okay. I'm fine. So they say, okay, bye. It's such a missed opportunity because that transformation hasn't even happened. So think about this from the coach's perspective. They're sending their client off before the transformation, right? The client's like, I guess that's it. This is as good as it's going to get for me. Think about the referrals that coach or counselor could get when it's like, oh my gosh, let's say they understood fine means stage 3 and they knew the language to take them to stages 4 and 5. And then they did. And now that client had a full blown transformation. Think of the referrals they'd get, the
Yeah,
testimonials they'd get.
absolutely.
Right. But they don't know when the client's like, no, I'm good. I'm okay. But there's like this flatness. They know
Yeah.
what it looks like. They know what it sounds like. Anyway, when you're in stage 3, you're doing things like you're planting these roots here. You're not supposed to. And now because of that, you're getting these small self benefits. You get your story. We love our story. You get someone to blame. You get sympathy from everyone you share it with. And so you plant deeper roots. And now you start thinking, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not that great. Maybe this, maybe that. So you plant deeper roots. And now, because you're thinking those thoughts, this is the energy you're putting out. Like energy attracts like energy. So now you have people and circumstances and new relationships. Here's the repeat betrayal to confirm this is where you belong. Here's where you join that lame support group. And now you think you found your people, right? So you sabotage yourself. Here's where you go to therapy. You're going to feel heard and validated and understood, actually solidifying your spot in stage 3. Stage 2, it's very valuable. And stage 3, very dangerous.
Yeah.
Here's where you're going to sabotage yourself because you're afraid to outgrow your betrayer, right? Gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but you don't know there's anywhere else to go. Right here, you start numbing, avoiding, distracting. So you use food, drugs, alcohol, whatever to get you through your day. So you do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years later and say, that emotional eating you're doing or that drinking you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? They'd look at me like I'm crazy. They'd say it happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3. Does that make sense?
100%. And it makes a lot more sense to me as I was an emotional eater for a very long time. And it was my thing.
Yeah.
It was what my go-to. And I can relate to the betrayal side of it, as well as the this being in that stuck in that survival mode.
Yeah.
So I can totally relate. And I know that there are a lot of listeners that would be able to relate as well. So
Yeah.
how then do we go from stage, because what you've already said is it looks so transitional from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, then
Mhm.
you're in this dangerous stage. How do you go from 3 to 4? Because that's kind of almost a breakthrough moment, I guess.
It really is. And stage 3 is the hardest space to leave because you could be there for years, decades, you know. It's also you've made it so comfortable, right? We've created this very functional foundational life and we don't know there's anything better, so we just think that this is the place to be. Anyway, the first step is there's something better. So if you're willingness is a big word right here, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do. You move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Just in that decision, you're turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stopped the massive damage that was being created in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like, I always use this example because it just makes sense. If you've ever moved to a new house, office, whatever, your stuff's not there. It's not cozy yet, but it's this hopeful excitement, right? But think about it. If you were to move, you don't bring everything with you. You don't take those things that don't represent who you're now ready to become. And what I found was there's this one spot as people go from stages 3 to stage 4. If your friends weren't there for you, you're done. That lame support group, you're done. The therapist who's you're just feeling heard and validated, you're done. The betrayer who's not changing, you're done. And people ask me all the time, what the heck is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come along. Very, very common in this space. Anyway, when you've settled into this new space, you've made it kind of cozy, mentally home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, you could do that earlier. The mind is healing, making all kinds of new rules, new boundaries. And we have a whole new worldview. based on everything we see so clearly now. And the four legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Beautiful. Really empowering, because betrayal comes in so many different forms.
Mhm.
And in order to, I can just relate so much, because thinking of the 5 stages, 1 to 5, I probably have been in stage 3 for at least a good decade.
Yeah.
I can really relate. And I just think there are a lot of things I think there was like an Instagram post that said something like, "You've changed." And it said dot, dot, dot. Yes, I have. And it was to do with, I'm becoming myself. I'm basically, is it cutting the fat is what is I don't know if it's a British term or an everywhere term, but um, you're getting rid of what is no longer needed and what no longer serves you. If somebody is constantly digging at you or bringing negativity, that's once you've kind of learned to have self-trust and have self-worth, you don't want to bring them along for the ride. Like, what? Why would you want to continue having that mockery? Yeah, I absolutely love those 5 stages.
Exactly. And it's so true. And that's why when someone is rebuilding themselves, they're very discerning. You're taking everything you love and you're leaving behind all the parts that you've outgrown. Like if you were settling, if you didn't take your needs seriously, if you put yourself last on the list, that's not coming along. And it's so interesting because, well, rebuilding, just to close the loop on my story, rebuilding is always a choice, whether you rebuild yourself and move along. That's what I did with my family. They weren't changing. I grew and it just grew away. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something from the ground up new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, as two completely rebuilt people, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids is our bridal party. And that's the new house, right there. That house was destroyed and we built a new one. But I think people are so afraid of the death and destruction of the old, but that's the only way you birth the new. And that new you
Absolutely.
has new rules, new levels of self-worth, new levels of confidence. And the idea is if that's not a match for that other person, that's okay. That's who you've become, period.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that you choose yourself.
Mhm.
Regardless, you choose
Yeah.
yourself, because actually, if that other person hasn't rebuilt themselves, like you and your husband, that you've both, like you just said, you both rebuilt yourselves. But in doing so, you were able to come back together as new people, as a new entity together. And my husband is ex-military, and we have seen many people on first, second, third wives or husbands. And we've been together since we were 16. We've been together a very long time. And they say, "How do you do it?" I said, "Well, you either grow together or you grow apart." And
Yes.
we have grown together and we've renewed our vows 3 times. Twice, sorry. We've married 3 times. So, and each time it's just a new connection to each other. So when you said, I heard it on the TED talk the other day, that you remarried your husband with new dress, new rings, and your children as your bridal party. It was amazing, because 3 years ago, we renewed our vows with our 2 little girls, and they were our bridesmaids. I think is that just extra special, isn't it? And I don't know how old your children are, but they have deeper understanding of that love connection and of what you've worked through. And I think, yeah, I do think that's absolutely magical. It just goes to show that if you put the work in, you can come out the other end.
And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. This happened when my kids were all teenagers. So imagine, and my husband was the one who told them. So imagine 4 teenagers looking at him thinking like, you did what to
Hmm.
mom? Like if anything has you wake up, it's losing everybody that mattered. And he did.
Yeah.
And then when we married each other again, I mean, my kids now are 24, 25, 29, and 30. But when we married each other again, I only wanted the kids there because I wanted them to right how they felt about it, because they saw me crash and I was like, they're going to see me rise. I have no idea how, but they're going to see something. And it was so interesting because the lessons they took from this about strength and resilience and love and forgiveness, it's serving them in all of their, in their relationships now. And it's beautiful to watch. And we've really rebuilt. We're making up for so much lost time. We're having so much fun now. It's all, now we're really having just such a good time.
Mhm. And when you've just said that, what is really interesting is you said they seen you crash. They seen you at your
Yeah.
kind of lowest when you went through that betrayal, and they will see you rise again. No one would have known at that moment that it would have been with your husband, which is even more magical because actually they've seen both sides of the coin.
Yeah. And really there was no expectation about that too. It was important for me just to get him out of the house because I was like, okay, that's it. We're done. You're still the kid's dad, but I need to figure this out. And the kids, I let them know in whatever way I could, this has nothing in the world to do with you. But I'm just going to do the best I can. I'm going to show up as best I can, but it's not my best. But it has nothing to do with you. And on his own, when he had time with them, he was rebuilding a new relationship in the way that they needed as well. And it was interesting because I started building this sort of list of criteria, not even for him, but just who I was working towards becoming, and if I ever were to date again anything, what type of person I would be looking for,
Y-
period, and that
Yeah,
wasn't even my concern. I just wanted to be there for my kids, my clients, my dogs, but, it was an opportunity just to really make changes in every way that I've outgrown. And this is the thing too. When people have an opportunity to rebuild, you don't want to waste that. You don't want to waste that, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. It should be uncomfortable. It should be getting to know each other again as two completely different people. That's the idea.
yeah,
And when you don't, it's just sort of more of the same. And it's a
yeah,
waste,
and
a waste
also,
of time.
yeah, waste of work, waste of time, and actually, you're meeting a new person, aren't you? You've both grown into new people. You can't go back and do things the way they were because you are not the same people. I know we don't have a lot of time. I just want to touch on forgiveness because I think that is really important. It's a big part of you've created or the founder of Forgiveness Day, which is like phenomenal. And you've forgiven your husband and you're married again. Tell me about that. We might need to do a second podcast, but
Yeah.
let
So,
me
so
know.
that doesn't mean it wasn't like I'm a highly sensitive empath and integrity is my number one value. So there is no place in me where betrayal is ever okay. Right. But when I talk about forgiveness, again, it's really about it has to do with the person who's been betrayed. It's so that you release all that toxic pain that you've been holding on to. Now, rebuilding has so much to do with the other person, because if that other person isn't changing, why in the world would you be willing to take that on again? Right? So forgiveness has to do with you. Rebuilding has so much to do with them. Again, you don't have to do anything with that, but there's tremendous opportunity if that person has crashed and burned and woken up. But with forgiveness, I look at it like I'm forgiving. I look at everything. Because I look at my experience. I could have been the poster child for betrayal, or I was meant to do something really big with it, you know? So from this spiritual perspective, it's like, okay, here I am now with all of our coaches and the books and the talks and the institute. So clearly I did something really good with something really painful. Not saying that everybody has to do big things, but that was my path. So
Mhm.
forgiving the pain of it, but for me, it wasn't even enough to forgive the pain. I had to do something really big with it. And if I could, then okay, you know, Forgiveness felt like the right thing to do, but also forgiving myself for thinking that it had anything to do with me, forgiving myself for being hard on myself for any reason, so forgiveness, there's so much to it. Forgiving for the betrayer, once they've done everything humanly possible to right the wrong, forgiving themselves for making those choices. It's not a mistake, it's a choice, for making those choices, and then forgiveness has a very important place.
Yeah, no, and I do believe that. The thing that really stood out to me then is you said forgiving the pain. Now that is really powerful, because if you forgive the pain, you're not necessarily forgiving the person. Like, in my case, it's childhood trauma. Now, I don't know if I could ever forgive the person for what they did. However, forgiving the pain that I went through and forgiving myself for the things that I believed was my fault is really, really powerful. Really powerful.
Any part of it that releases you from holding on to what's holding you back in feeling happy and free and confident, whatever it is, whatever piece of that, I look at it like, a rope that has like all those little strings all together. And that's what makes the rope. Whatever you can snip away, right? Just to slowly free yourself from it. That's in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just like, can you tell me then where people can find you, the PBT, yeah, Post Betrayal Transformation Institute. Oh my gosh, I will get there in the end. At the end
Yeah,
of the
no worries.
podcast.
Yeah, so it's yeah, the everything is at the PBT is in Post Betrayal Transformation Institute.com. So the book, I mean, Unstuck, I'm so proud of this one because this is really for that practitioner. They're so good at what they do, they don't understand betrayal. So it's a different language. It has the stages. And when you understand, even if it happened years ago and that client isn't coming to you for betrayal, you'll spot it if you know what to
Mhm.
look for. So, that's why I wrote Unstuck, so that those great coaches and therapists, their tools just work so much better, because great tools at the wrong time are going to backfire. They're already
Yeah,
great at what they do. They just need to understand this language so it all works so much better for that
amazing. I will also put, so on my website, I've got a book library section. I will add Unstuck to my library.
thing.
The other thing is, I remembered you said it, is about your pain. I have started riding the trauma train because I am putting my pain into purpose. I don't believe that we go through these things for no reason. We do go through them for an opportunity. I am forever grateful for Cameron reaching out to me and us connecting. And honestly, people need to go and listen to your TED Talks, because I think I've listened to the self-sabotage one about 3 times so far.
You want to know a little secret about that one? I'll tell you a little insider scoop. I did that first TEDx talk, Stop Sabotaging Yourself, 6 weeks after my betrayal.
No.
You can hear me hint about it. I was not ready to talk about it. Do you have post betrayal syndrome? That was the first time I really spoke about it on a big stage like that. But Stop Sabotaging Yourself, that was like, I can't even watch it because I know what I was going
Mhm.
through, but that was 6 weeks after. I don't even know how I did that.
Wow, you would have done that like numb, like that would have just been a go for it type thing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
shows your true strength.
I don't know what it was, but there was something brewing. It wasn't ready to come out yet, but something was simmering under the surface for sure.
Well, what you're doing is amazing. And I think betrayal is so under knowledgeable. I don't even know what the term is. People need to know that, actually, because so many different forms of trauma, the sole root of it is the betrayal. I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to share this episode with so many people.
Thank you. Well, we're excited to get my intention is to certify as many coaches, counselors, therapists as possible, then get this as part of coaching curriculums and therapy, part of their education, and then get it into university, get it as part of the curriculum, and just have
Yeah,
people understand these 5 stages and post betrayal syndrome, and get it in the DSM. We really want to get this out there. So I'm so grateful for an opportunity to share.
amazing. Well, I will add all the links to the bottom. And if anybody wants to comment or share, we've got your website, and then I will add any of your other kind of social media handles to the show notes. Dr. Debi, thank you so, so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Riding the Trauma Train. I'm Lydia, and I feel privileged to share this space with you. No matter where you are on this train right now, whether it's in survival mode, slowly finding your feet in recovery, or maybe it's somewhere in between, remember, you are not alone in what you're feeling, and you do not have to travel this journey by yourself. So if you'd like to continue traveling together, please follow Riding the Trauma Train wherever you're listening, so you can join us at the next stop. Until next time, take care.